Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. It is time. Welcome and hello. My name is Amber Kowach, and I am the Curriculum Director for Manistee Area Public Schools. And this evening, I'll be serving as the moderator for this community forum. So nice to have such a good audience, humans and animals. In a moment, I'll be turning this presentation over to Superintendent Ron Stoneman to share with us the vision and scope of the MAPS bond proposal. But during his presentation, we encourage you to submit any questions that you might have to the chat, as Superintendent Stoneman will respond to those during the Q&A portion. Just a reminder to please remember to keep your microphones muted while the presentation is being delivered, as we'll be saving all those questions for the end. Okay, without further ado, are you ready, Superintendent Stoneman?
I am. Thank you, Amber.
All right.
Ken, can you set up our slides? I just want to welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us this evening. I do regret not being in person as planned for today. But we will make do with a circumstance. So we'll get started. Ken, are you able to get our presentation queued up?
One second here.
Thank you. You may be looking for a version, Ken. Shannon may have sent you something in the last couple of days, a little bit of a revision. Let me see. Shannon, he not sure that he received something. Can you resend that to him right now?
I just did.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Almost there.
Thanks. Sorry for the confusion, Ken.
This is great, though. Our audience is growing.
All right, thank you. It's our presentation. We're looking at CHIPS, the Chippewa Edge. And just to note that the MAPS 2020, we have a 1 built into our 20 there. And that is just a reflection on our If you recall, last year, the board was moving forward with a bond proposal for last year. And because of COVID and the of circumstance of being real fresh COVID, they decided to put that on hold and move it to 2021. But we still have our 2020 vision related to our plan and vision. So next slide, please. We're here today to review the scope of the project, understand the impact of the proposal, both for students and for our staff, but also for the community. Discuss community importance and why a stable educational environment is important. All right, next slide. Just a little bit of history on MAPS facility. At the top, you see we have Jefferson Elementary. It is a 67-year-old building, 1954. And based on enrollment and cost projections, modernizing this building really comes at a very high cost. And it's currently meeting our needs, but we are really struggling to do any. We're tight on space in the building, and it just lacks the modern amenities that are just becoming prevalent in education. And the 57-year-old building, Madison Elementary, built in 1964, was the last time the community voted to approve a bond initiative that included elementary facilities. So that's quite a time ago. Not too long ago, I guess, comparatively, 54 years ago, a well-constructed new high school was built, and that is currently serving elementary students, grades 3 through 5, and are in a learning space designed for high school students. And just to reflect, in Jefferson Elementary, we have kindergarten through 2nd, and the old high school, 54 High School, has 3rd through 5th. And if you can believe it or not, 22 years ago in 1999, Manistee then high school facility bond was passed and construction began. And now it holds Manistee Middle School, grades 6th, 7th, and 8th, and also high school, that is 9, 10, 11, 12. And now consolidated for all those grades, requires some renovation to meet the needs of our younger students that are now in that building. And it also, becoming 20 years old, some of the items need to be replaced, such as roof and some other items that we'll talk about in the scope of the work. So that's the history of our facilities. And as you can see, our elementary facilities are definitely on the older side. Next slide, please. The MAPS 2020 vision and plan, we're looking at project impact, and that's providing our youngest learners a safe and accessible environment and for classrooms. We'd like to equip our teachers with an environment that include the tools they need to impact students and be successful. And it requires a different environment for that kind of support. And for our future, investing a sustainable education foundation for the future of our community. And how important that is, we'll touch on a little bit later, but just to add that, when communities are measured for their success or reflected upon what makes a successful community, education is a really big part of that, and that there is an investment in education, and that it is a valued component to a community. Public safety, health, hospital, and doctor services are another factor for a successful community, and entertainment and things to do for a community. Those are pillars of a successful community. All right, looking at the next slide, please. Okay, this is the scope, the general scope of the project, and looking at on the left, the middle school site, middle school, high school site. As you can see, there's a couple of things I want to talk about as we put this plan together, there were some priorities that the board took on at this site. And the secure entry and check-in, if you've been into the building lately, in the last year or so, you will see that you were able to, used to be able to walk right into the building through the front door and be into the commons area, and that you would have to take a right and go into the office, but you could enter the building unchecked and go about. And so it was determined to be an important factor that needed to be addressed sooner than later. So the board decided to have an expenditure related to that. And now when you walk in, you buzz to get in the door. And before you're able to walk through the second set of main doors into the commons area, now you have to take a right. There is a doorway that goes straight into the office where you have to check in and be accounted for before you go into the building. So we're glad that occurred. There are also improvements in the pickup and drop off area. That's the light blue in the diagram out in front of the building. That surface was sealed. The asphalt was resealed, and new signage was added to that area for the goal to better separate parent and student drop off and pickup and our buses. And so we've relocated buses over near the pool parking lot and have new signage that represents how traffic should flow. We believe, and it has increased the safety in that area and the congestion for the beginning of the day and at the end of the day. But other needs that weren't addressed and we're asking for in the scope of the bond, we're looking at construction of a dedicated middle school gym and lockers. And if you see the bright yellow on the diagram of the middle school, high school, that is right behind the existing gym. And that will be a middle school gym. And if you're familiar with the grade that drops off the hill, that will be able to have a facility underneath there, and that would be the location of a dedicated middle school locker rooms, which we feel is really important for those grade levels, and some extra storage down there. And we're looking at potentially storing our pits in there, and those are our track, high jump, and pole vault pits. That would really serve them well for longevity if they're be able to be stored indoors during the winter months. And so we believe we'll have some area for that on the second or on the ground floor of underneath the gymnasium. Also, we're looking at roof replacement. Like I said, the warranty on the 20-year roof is coming to an end. And we are looking at a partial roof replacement. That would be the light yellow that you see in the diagram. That's mainly over the academic wing of the building. And we're looking at replacing that section of the roof as our first swipe at full roof replacement. And obviously, we're looking to improve or replace door and hardware updates throughout the building. 22 years of action with students. Those are seeing better days, and we would like to replace and repair all of those that are necessary to be done in the building. All right, moving on. Moving on to the next diagram on that page. Thank you. Demolition, we're talking about Jefferson now, and we're looking at that site. And we're like to consolidate pre-K through fifth grade in the Kennedy building. So the Jefferson building would be obsolete at this point. And so we're looking at demolishing that building and creating a green space for MAPS athletic fields, and consideration would be taken between what's available on Sands and Sands Park on the Jefferson site. We have put together a neighborhood committee to review the possibilities for that site, and they've been engaged and working on recommendations. And we're looking at maintaining the neighborhood as a top priority with the committee and the MAPS property. Just making sure that what we do with that property in the future, taking into consideration of that neighborhood and the residents. So, just to talk about that a little bit more, we are talking about once the building comes down, we'll be evaluating our needs for space, be it athletics or other needs that we may have for school use for green space, and see what we need, and then evaluate, if we're looking at more green space or the possibility of selling a portion of the property off for housing development. So that is all still in play and part of the discussion, but definitely starts with evaluation of the district needs that we'll have at that time, and looking into the future also. Moving on to what is considered Kennedy Elementary, and that is the 1967 high school building. Right now it holds grades 3 through 5. At that site in the bond scope, we're looking at demolishing the 1927 building. Again, secure entries and check-in, and secure academic wings for the building, and update the meet modern educational standards. If you've been around that building at the beginning of the day or at the end of the day, it is obvious for safety to have a dedicated bus and parking areas, and have an updated pickup and drop off areas as imperative for that building. It just is non-existent at this point. But renovation of this 1967 building is made possible by the commitment in 67 to spend really good money to build a very strong facility, a block and steel building that still has life for the district, and which saves a great deal of money rather than considering and building a new building. We can accomplish much more with our money by renovation of this building, and the square footage that is accessible to this building will allow us to get pre-kindergarten through 5th grade in the building. Right, moving on to Madison. Madison Elementary right now serves the needs of several partners that we have. Right now, we rent space in the building to MGLVA, that is a cyber academy that the district authorizes. They have about 4 rooms in that building that they rent. Also listed on the side there are partners of Central Wellness, rent space for their autistic program where they work with autistic children. And also the ISD has programming that they also utilize some of that building. So we're really pleased with our partners with that building. And so the viability of that building and moving forward in that part of town is an exciting opportunity. And we also have currently their GSRP and our preschool tuition-based program. And they will be moving over to the Kennedy Elementary building when the bond pass, and it is retrofitted for their space. And also central office will be moving over there. So the expenditures related to the bond for Madison relate to a new roof. The mechanicals need to be upgraded, boiler and air handling units. And again, central office, retrofitting some of the existing rooms for central office purpose. That is the basic scope. Exciting things happening at Kennedy. There would be an addition added to the building for a cafeteria, for a 1st floor cafeteria and a new kitchen, and office areas would be added to the building also. And it's just exciting that this building is in a condition that could be retrofitted for many, many years to come to serve the purpose of an elementary school. And we're just grateful that the community made a decision to build such a quality building for future use. And again, at the top of the list, there is the demolishing of the 1927 building would be required to happen to create the space. All right, moving on. Financial impact, just our little cartoon character there, just letting us know that consolidating and renovating and updating an elementary can save us a lot of money. And then that picture is our 27 building that that will be taken down. Why now? With the current conditions, we take advantage of these historical interest rates. This is a good time. Construction costs grow each year that we wait, so it'll only get more expensive, and the idea of higher interest rates and construction increases is not a good formula for doing this in the future. This is good timing. The 2017 facility assessment identified infrastructure, maintenance, and furnishing needs in excess of $48 million over the next 10 years. That's maintaining the buildings that we currently have. And all 4 buildings remaining in service, if that's true, if we continue in this direction, after 20 years, we're looking at a $63 million or more worth of cost. So 10 years, 48, and that jumps to 63 million at 20 years for all 4 buildings. So our aging facilities and consist of square footage in excess of our needs and are very quickly outpacing our budget. So what that has meant that we have more square footage per student than we really actually need, but it's just not constructed in a way that we can access it in a conducive educational environment. So we need to get to these, renovate these spaces so we can consolidate and save some money. And that last bullet, consolidating our elementary infrastructure as outlined in the bond scope, would allow the district to save $21.16 million over the next 20 years. And based on our projected maintenance and capital needs of all existing elementary buildings. So right sizing ourselves per se will help the district save money over a long period of time. And allows us to only have to maintain the square footage that is, we kind of get our funding for. And we'll talk about that in a future slide. Next slide, please. All right, here we go, right sizing our facilities. When drafting the scope of the bond, the district responsible for demonstrating the scale of the project would not exceed the needs of the current and projected enrollment. So in the process of applying for Treasury to use the Treasury bonding source, we're required to produce a third-party enrollment projections. And they, a company provides us those projections. And Treasury takes those numbers to make sure that we're not under building or providing square footage for students, and they're watching to make sure that we're not overproducing square footage for our current and projected enrollment. They want to make sure that we're doing this project in a scope that fits our needs. And square footage of all 4 MAPS district buildings exceeds the amount of space needed for our students we serve now and in the future. School funding is based on enrollment, and square footage as excess will continue to create costs that outpaces our funding. So without right sizing, we will be maintaining more square footage than we get per student to do so. So it'll really put a stress on our finances to continue to maintenance and care for square footage that's in excess. And again, consolidation would allow right size of our district and facilities to meet the needs of our students while also creating financial efficiencies. All right, next slide. Now we're looking at the money portion of our vision, and it's an ask of just under $31 million. That's a proposed increase of 2.65 mil to the existing bond debt. And if you look at the diagram, the table towards the top, represents what that means financially. And you may find your home's value in that table approximately. And then the next column is your tax increase by year. And then the green numbers are tax increase by month. And looking at the scale below, we have, I know the years are hard to see along the bottom, but it starts at 1999 when the community voted to pass to build a new high school. It was a 0 to 4 mil increase. And as you see, the years progress. The collection of that has gotten lower. And we're currently assessing 2.05 mils for next year to pay on the debt. And this cartoon character on the side represents that would be a 265 plus the 205 is be a 4.7 increase on this ask. But looking at the blue lines, you see them decreasing. Some factors that to consider that is that there's less of the debt to be paid, so less mills are collected. Also, refinancing has occurred at least 3 times by the district, which is allows less interest to be paid, and that means less mills to be collected to pay the debt. And just recently, last year, the district refunded the last 9-10 years of this bond, and we're able to save about $800,000 worth of interest to be paid off in the last 10 to 9 years. So you're looking at 2000 where the green line and the blue line are together. You see that jump up to 4.7. And that green line and blue line continue to go. And when that bond is paid off, when the 1999 bond is paid off, it will drop off, and then we'll just be back onto this bond that we're proposing for May 4th. And why I've been asked why doesn't it drop off a little sharper, because the blue line and the debt is paid off from the 1999. If you go up to the boxes of the blue and green, you see that it is the 1999 bond was a 30-year term bond, and the bond that we're asking for May 4th is a 25-year bond. And we're looking at loading up once the 1999 bond is paid off. We'll be loading up and paying this bond off quicker than the last one. And we can do so when the 1999 bond is paid off. So that was a question that I got, and I thought that was, I'll share that answer. So, all right, moving on, next slide. Our character there, a cartoon, 60 years since the elementary bond has been approved. That is focused on elementary facilities. Next slide. I like this slide. It's a comparative slide. It compares our mill collection with other communities. At the top table there, it is our county districts that we share Manistee County with. And as you can see, enrollment is included there, debt, mills collected, and then sinking fund. And we, as you see, we have near triple the amount of students of any other district, and more than triple for some. And you can see our collectible mills at 2.5, and you can see how we compare to other districts. And when we add the 2.65, if this bond's passed, we will still be in a pretty good neighborhood, less than 5 mills moving forward. But if you've noticed the elementary and overall facilities in the out-county districts, besides our middle school, high school, our elementary facilities are woefully are behind. Very obviously behind with our neighbors. And the bottom scale table represents our neighbors in other counties. And so we have Benzie there, who has recently passed a item, and they're up to 2.88. Mason County Central, they'll be going for something next year, and they're at 3.3, and they continue to support their community and pass bonds, and their facilities represent that. They have a very nice campus. Ludington recently passed a $100 million bond. They have the fortune of Consumers Energy there that allows them to collect a lower mill to get that amount. But Cadillac recently passed a significant bond issue, and you can see where they are at 6.15. And we've added Spring Lake here. They're kind of an exemplary of an example of a successful community. And we've compared ourselves with Spring Lake academically and some other items. And they're just a community that represents the components of success. And that shows their mill collection. And we do that also with Fremont. And you can see where their mill collection is. And we're at 2.05, so comparatively we are way low. And even if we add the 2.65 to 4.7, we are still in a reasonable comparison rate to other districts that we're very familiar with, and who we compete with for development, families, parents, and other things. And since school of choice is a big factor, that's something to consider, and we'll address that in the upcoming slide. All right, next slide, please. Oh, here we are, school of choice. In 1996, school districts placed in the position to consider marketability, really for the first time. And that has put districts in a very competitive environment for students. As you know, our funding is based on a per student situation. So we need students to make sure that we are getting the funding that we need necessarily to educate students and provide and maintain the facilities that we have. Our mission or our vision positions our district to capture and retain families seeking quality educational resources. It's very important part of the community to offer educational environment that is attractive for this purpose of marketability and schools of choice. Next slide. Plan B. Without the bond, the district would need to make some budget decisions. There'll be shortfalls related to what we need to address, and delaying critical and safety and quality upgrades for our buildings is a critical situation. And building consolidation plan without modifying these buildings and renovating them for their use. Like I said, we have a high school, 1967 high school, that represents the most square footage that we have in a building for elementary use. And it is retrofitted for high school students and 1967 high school students. So that represents a great need for our elementary students. And determining how to rescale amenities such as athletics and media centers and community space to meet the needs of grade levels, like I described, is going to be a very expensive situation that we'll have to consider and deal with. And creating a plan for modifying or reducing educational offerings based on space and resources that are available may be a critical point that we will be at if we do not get this passed. So we're wonderful AP courses and other arts and things that we know and have in the district and have great value for. I'm just concerned if we're looking at facility expenses that some of these things will have to be discussed and planned upon. All right, next slide, please. Oh, back one. The value of education. the potential for stabilizing property values, that we really, if you don't have students in the district and are struggling to understand the value of this project for you, that understanding what this kind of project can do to potentially stabilize property values. It keeps young families in our community, attracts economic development, and talking and working with developers or potential developers in Manistee over the last few years, they're communicating about things that they look for in a community that makes it a desirable place for investment. And like I said earlier, hospitals and public safety and entertainment value, but public schools is a big component of that. And so they're looking for these things in a community so that they know that the community is serious and are capable of this kind of economic development and supporting it. It also provides workforce for area businesses and develops students into productive citizens. We have a kind of a older community, retirement kind of community, and we really need this kind of workforce of younger families in our community to sustain that kind of population and provide the services for a community. Without young families and kids to work, it makes it very challenging to sustain a community that's dependent on a lot of services. All right, next slide. This is where I hope to have some good questions, and I do have some support on answering some of these questions tonight. Joining me is, we have Chrisman Construction Company. That is our construction management company that we've brought on, and architect firm Tower Pinkster is with us with Matt Sagel, and I think Dan Lamore is with us this evening from Chrisman. So let's see what we have in questions and see where we go. Amber, what you
Okay,
got?
well, the chat's very quiet tonight. So I'm encouraging anybody who has a question to please put it in the chat so we can have some great conversation. I'm wondering, while we're waiting to see if anybody else has questions, if you might want to talk a little bit about timeline and when projects might be completed if the bond passes.
All right, I will I'll turn that over to Dan. I know that we talking about moving some grade levels out of Kennedy and keeping some probably older grade level in the building, and it'll cause some navigation situations, but I know Dan may have a better line on that timeline.
Yeah, Ron, I'd be very happy to answer that. If the bond passes here in the next month, then we'll spend the next year or so with Tower Pinkster doing design of the new Kennedy building, which would lead to a spring of 2022 construction start. As you mentioned, it's really important to accommodate safe and successful operation of the students and staff. So there's some phasing involved in that building that we need to investigate a little more thoroughly. But spring of 22 is when we would start. We would hope to be able to have some of the building occupiable for the following school year of 23, and possibly the entire building, but at worst case would be fall of 24. And then the high school addition would start in early 23 and be ready to be occupied by school 24 as well. So I think that's a high level summary of timelines.
Thank you, Dan.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. Okay, we've had a couple questions come in the chat, so I'll start there. The first question says, what % of future enrollment increase would be supported?
The third-party enrollment projections that we received have us on a declining enrollment. Birth rates, all over our state are lower, and so it is a declining enrollment. but we are planning for 4 classrooms per grade level. Right now, we're looking at 90 is a high kindergarten class coming in. It's usually in the 80s, mid 80s, lower 80s. So we have lots of room within the 4 classrooms to maintain the current classes that we get. And we have the ability for growth with those kind of numbers for 4 classrooms per grade level. So we have the room in the plan.
Great. Thanks, Ron. The
Yep.
next question says, what happens to current buildings in Parkdale?
That's a really good question, another good question. And just so it's understood that there's a Parkdale building that is one of our old schools that was bought probably 7 years ago. That sale was final, and it is not our building. So that Parkdale building does not belong to the school district. And it does break my heart to drive by that and see the condition of that building in Parkdale. And but it is not our building. And I think we've learned from that that bringing these buildings down that were no longer in use or needed is a very important factor for the bond scope. And I know Parkdale looks like a school, and it's in our school district, and our bus garage with the school buses are right next door. So the appearance of it says one thing, but in reality, it is not our building.
Thanks. Next question. How will students be displaced during the construction?
Yeah, we still have Madison Elementary that will have some classrooms available for us to use. I believe we can get a grade level into a separate area into the middle school, high school, definitely a temporary situation. And that would leave 1 grade level left at Kennedy. And so we would have a year of displacement while construction was going on for Kennedy. Otherwise, Jefferson building can stay as it is now.
Next question. Have you figured in the increased revenue due to higher assessments now and in the future?
Yeah, what would affect that, and maybe Howard could address it if I'm missing it. But if there is higher revenue collected, then we would collect less mill because it's raising more money to pay the debt. So property values, I think, is the question, and it goes up from assessments, and then we would collect less to capture the same amount of money that we need to pay down the debt. Howard, does that sound about right from that question?
Yep, that's accurate. As the taxable value goes up, the levy, the number of mills we levy would decrease because we wouldn't need to as many mills on that larger base to amortize the debt.
Great. Okay, I believe this is a follow-up question to asking about those buildings in Parkdale. The question is, what about the ISD building that's in Parkdale?
Yep, the ISD building is independent of the school district. It is, the intermediate school district's building, and so they're responsible for that building, and they operate totally separate from the district.
Okay. There are no more questions in the chat, but we'll give it a few more minutes to see if anybody else has anything that they're wondering about. In the meantime, I know a conversation that has been ongoing throughout this entire bond project is, what about the Jefferson property? Can you speak a little more to that, Ron? What might happen with the Jefferson property?
Yeah, good question. We've been working with the Jefferson Neighborhood Committee, and this committee is helping the district evaluate what possibilities exist. And obviously, they would only make a recommendation to the Board of Education. That is the role of the committee. And the idea of bond funds taking down that building. So that footprint of that building where those funds were spent would be have to be maintained by the district. But it is, we have a near 5 acres in that area, and would allow the possibility of other things. And what we've been considering as a committee and working with the city, we know that there is a housing need in the community. And so there's possibility of selling lots, portions of that property off for buildable lots. And the district has the ability to put deed restrictions to make sure that the homes that would be built on these lots that are sold reflect the neighborhood. And I know the Jefferson Committee and the Board of Education want to make sure that the integrity and that tax base in that neighborhood is supported, and the housing reflect that neighborhood. But also, I think the first thing that we need to do is evaluate as a district if there's any needs that the district may have with that portions of that property before any decisions made. And that, we have to think of what our current needs are at that time, and talk about what future needs may exist for the district. As the project is developed on Kennedy's property, that football field will be used for the bus loop and parent drop-off parking area. And so we'll be losing some green space that we've utilized for years there, mainly with middle school sports. And our youth sports use that field quite often. We'll examine what green space is available. I know the city is anxious to cooperate with us if there's any green space in existing parks like Sands Park that could be utilized, and what might be needed at Jefferson. So I guess the short answer is anything is possible. And right now we're looking at the needs of the district and potential green space and housing lots. And it might be a combination of both because the footprint of the current Jefferson building will have to be sustained by the district.
Great. Ron, another question came into the chat asking for a little clarification on the ISD building and specifically how that is separate from MAPS.
Sure. The ISD, there's usually an ISD, an intermediate school district, or a educational service district in each county, and that they work independently from school districts. So ISDs support service for all of the school districts in a county. So they provide special ed services for our special ed students. They provide professional development services for our teachers and our staff. And this ISD provides business services for the smaller districts in the county. So they receive separate funding from the state. They're an independent entity, educational entity in the county. So they are totally separate from us, and they are there to service all districts in a county. I hope that helps.
Great. Okay, another question came in. It says, where would sports teams like middle school football and MRA programs that use the current Kennedy Field go to practice once it's changed to pick up and drop off lines with the bond proposal?
That is a good question, Jacqueline. Thank you. We have making improvements to the old high school track, the field that's kind of up on the hill on the camp near or on the campus of the middle school, high school. We're looking at making improvements on that field, getting a portion of the track out, and that we can utilize that space. And it has some drainage problems that we're going to fix and some unevenness up there. We're going to get that field into in shape where it can be used more frequently by different sports. It is definitely utilized by our football, JV and varsity football program right now. And there we can expand the use of that field. We're still developing the infield of our track. We're looking like to have that get developed, and looking at potentially a scoreboard for that field, that it could serve as a practice field, an extra soccer field, and be designated for that use. There's an open green space that we're considering that's right behind the visitors bleachers at our football stadium, is another green space that we could improve and develop for use. And then we'll take into consideration what is in Sands Park is a possibility, and then what space at Jefferson that we should be looking at or considering if our needs are greater than the examples that I provided. So it is on our mind. We know that's a valuable green space that we're losing at Kennedy, but we're working on a plan to increase, if not replace, for that kind of use.
Okay, I'll throw out a last call for questions. And in the meantime, I've got one more that I'd like to ask. Given the challenges that COVID-19 continues to present to us, I'm wondering how all of that has maybe impacted the scope of the bond this year.
We've learned so much during this time, and just space is so important. And making sure we have flexible space so that we can operate in a classroom and move things around in a way that contributes to safety, but also supports education where there's small group work and other things that we can do. So just ability to create flexible space. The classrooms will be a little bit larger than we're accustomed to now. And I think the main safety thing that we're learning is air quality and the circulation of air. And I know that we spent this past summer touring the middle school, high school to determine what needs may be for that building. And we know at the Kennedy Elementary in the future of that has a great air quality needs, and be retrofitted with a new system. That'd be really important. But creating space and for each student is really important. And maybe Matt Sagel from Tower Pinkster may be able to add some thoughts to that, what we've learned in COVID and how we're looking at design a little bit different.
Thanks, Ron. Yeah, the one thing I would add is you mentioned earlier, you have a lot of good space in the old high school building, Kennedy, and just the ability to repurpose that is of huge value. That we're not building new. That it will actually be larger common spaces, which will help kids separate. We'll also be looking at replacing the HVAC system throughout the building to upgrade it as well, and current code requirements provide for more air changes, which inherently filters the air more and provides better air quality.
Just to add one thing, I think maybe unrelated to facilities is we learned a great deal about procedures and processes for transition, especially for elementary and middle school students. How we conduct ourselves in recesses and separation, and the understanding cohorts and how to move about the building in cohorts and have lunch in a safer way. The processes and procedures, mainly with transitions, that's been a valuable learn for us, and that we'll carry that into the future. I think it'll help during just normal flu seasons and other health factors, is to just understand what spacing and cohorting can do.
Great. Well, thanks, Ron. I'm not seeing any other questions in the chat. So is there anything else you'd like to share with the group before we say goodbye?
You know, this is our final community forum, and I've been all over the community for the last 2 years, and I just want to thank the welcoming that I've had with so many organizations and groups, and that they provided a forum for me to communicate this vision and this work that we're looking at, and I think it's been a clear message, and that it's understood, and I think it's unquestionable of what our needs are. They're quite glaring, and that there seems to be a sense of commitment to the community that's arising through development and focus. And I just can't speak enough of how important education is to that focus. And when I speak to business owners and others that will be affected by an increase, they understand the reward for that. And I appreciate that feedback that I hear when I meet with those groups. And so, again, I just want to thank them and appreciate them supporting, at least listening and learning. So thank you.
Okay, well, thank you for all those excellent questions. Always great to be able to respond to those and have some good conversation. We appreciate everyone's time tonight participating. And I believe Ron's information is on the screen still. And you can always reach him through our maps2020.org website. So please check that out if there's anything else that's on your mind. Thanks so much and have a really wonderful evening.
Thank you, Amber. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.